Hi guys, it's Michelle checking in with you for another week of Sportsbook Revolution TV. Let's get started this week in college football. Things got back to normal for the sportsbooks this week after taking a bath the week prior when the majority of the favorites all covered their point spreads. This week there were enough underdog victories throughout college football for Vegas to get some of its money back. And what more of an underdog victory can you have other than the Texas A&M win over the Alabama Crimson Tide in Tuscaloosa on Saturday? Johnny Manziel, or Johnny Football as he's called, did a lot to increase his chances for a Heisman Trophy this year with an impressive performance against the Tide. Just prior to the game, Manziel had a 20-1 chance to take home the trophy at the end of the year, but I expect his odds to increase as soon as the next predictions are cast. With Alabama's loss, the top three in the BCS finally belongs to teams outside of the SEC. Kansas State moved to the top spot, followed by Oregon and Notre Dame, who all continue their unbeaten streak this year. In fact, with only a couple of weeks left to go in the regular season, we expect an exciting race among the top three to make it to the national championship in Miami. The question is, who's it going to be? Notre Dame is looking at a game against Wake Forest before taking on the USC Trojans in its finale, while Kansas State seems to have an easier road with matchups against Baylor and Texas. And then there's Oregon with two tough ones coming up against Stanford and Oregon State. Moving on to the big boys in the NFL, the sportsbooks bounced back from last week's huge losses with a more respectable showing this week as far as upsets go. Probably the biggest surprise was Atlanta's loss at the hands of the New Orleans Saints. It looks like the 72 Dolphins can breathe a sigh of relief for another year as the Falcons' loss marked the last of the undefeated teams in the NFL. Other games of note included a must-win matchup between the Eagles and the Cowboys, the quarterback duel between Peyton Manning and Cam Newton, and a marathon event between the 49ers and the Rams. Out of those three, Dallas came out with a win, Manning and the Broncos manhandled the Panthers, and the 49ers, which lost quarterback Alex Smith in the first quarter, ended with the first tied game since 2008. But what may have been the most intriguing fact coming out of the NFL in Week 10 is this. Did you know that 5 starting quarterbacks left with game-ending injuries? San Fran's Alex Smith, Chicago's Jay Cutler, and the Eagles' Mike Vick all suffered concussions, while Big Ben from the Steelers and the Jaguars' Blaine Gabbert both had their shoulders dinged up. And if you're a fantasy player, you may have wanted another starting quarterback to leave early this weekend. Complaints erupted from the fantasy world when the usually stellar Eli Manning turned in yet another disappointing performance. His current slump extended to 3 straight games when the Giants took a beating from Andy Dalton and the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday. In college basketball, the nation was treated to a weekend-long event dedicated to our veterans. Multiple college games were played in conjunction with Veterans Day observances in places like San Diego, Charleston, Jacksonville, and even Ramstein Air Base in Germany. While there was still plenty of action surrounding all of the early season games, the most important part was the respect given to the servicemen and women over the 3 days. We at Sportsbook Revolution want to echo those sentiments and do our part to thank those who served and those who serve us today. And finally, to the young pro basketball season. Not much has really changed in the power rankings for the NBA since last week, but an interesting story did come up in Los Angeles when the Lakers opted to bring in Mike D'Antoni as their head coach, choosing him over Phil Jackson, who was thought to be a shoo-in for the job. And although the change was big in LA, the books in Vegas still had the Lakers at 4-1 odds to win the championship at the end of the year. Well, that'll do it for me this week. Thanks for tuning in, and remember to check back each and every week to get the latest on sports and gaming news right here on Sportsbook Revolution TV. Welcome to the Revolution.